Welcome back to the IE427 Garage, everybody. This week we are working on the Decades Cobra. We actually have the owner flying down from Oregon, and he's going to spend a couple of days with us in the shop. Mrs. IE427 is picking him up at his hotel right now. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to give you guys a synopsis and an overview of what we're going to do while he's here. I'm hoping to get all of the parts that need to go off to powder coating completed before the car owner leaves this weekend. So come right back. I'll share my list with you on the things that I hope we are able to get completed this weekend. So here is the list as I have it, kind of as it stands right now. I hope to get all of these items completed by the end of the weekend, but we'll see how it goes. If anything looks different in the video, I changed the lighting here in the shop over this past week. The lights that were in here previously were a 65K light rendering, and they were making the videos, especially if I did any fast motion or anything, really making them look grainy. And so I changed the lights out to actually a lower wattage, but honestly it seems just as bright in here, and I changed them down to a 5000K rendering, and so it feels brighter in here to me. I don't know why, but just so you guys can see the lights up on the, I mean, they don't look all that different. The lights themselves are probably similar to the manufacturer I had before. They're just a little bit different in the wattage and the rendering, as I've said. So if it looks different, just know that's why it is. Here's the list, and I made this up over the last couple of weeks as I was getting ready for the car owner to come in from out of town. So, and my penmanship sucks here, guys, so bear with me. So first on the list, I want to get the fuel pump and fuel pump hanger put in the car. The second thing is we've got some coilover springs that we're going to change out. So we're going to change out from the factory 5 supplied springs, which I have found to be somewhat inconsistent in their spring rate, to a higher quality spring from Eibach. And we're actually going to change the spring rate on the front of the car. We're going to go from 500 pound rating to a 425 pound rating. In the rear of the car, I'd like to get these rear sail panels on. So the panels that go right in here on both sides of the car, because I've got some other stuff that I want to do if we get those on the car that don't appear on the list, and I'll go over that in a second. I'd like to get the reservoir bracket made for the master cylinder reservoirs that we got from Mike Forte. We're going to make it out of a simple piece of aluminum angle that I usually stock here in the shop, but we're going to cut it down to size. We're going to fabricate the bracket to get the reservoirs mounted for that. We're going to get a e-brake handle from a late model according to who, from basically a 94 through a 2004 Ford Mustang. We're going to get that handle mounted in here for our e-brake, and then we're going to put in the e-brake cables from the same said vehicle. So from a 94 through 2004. Actually, they're going to be SN95 brake cables, so that would be 94 through 98. But the handle remained the same all the way to 2004. I want to work on the dash extension panels. We fabricated the panels, or I fabricated the panels, I think after the car owner left on his last trip down here. But what I'd like to do is get the the headlight switch and the emergency flasher switch mounted in the driver's side firewall extension piece. And then lastly, I'd like to get the rear chassis harness installed in the car. That's gonna be a little bit of work because I think we may have to add a wire to that because of the configuration that we have for the tail lights on this car. Because it's an older kit, it utilizes the twin lights on each side of the rear of the car, and so therefore we have a separate turn signal and brake on each side, and so I'm not going to have any extra wires that I'm not using go to the back of the car, so I'm most likely going to have to add one for a trunk light if the car owner decides he wants a light in the trunk. The last thing, going back to those sail panels, I'd like to get the sail panels mounted now because we have a charcoal canister that's going to mount next to the fuel filler inlet on the passenger side of the car, and so I'd like to get that bracket in place so that we can send it out to powder coat as well. So primarily what I'm concerned with more than anything for this trip down that the customer's making is to make sure that we get every panel, every bracket that we need in a box so that I can send it off to the powder coater, and then as those pieces come back, I can reinstall all of those things that we've previously mocked up. It'll give me a couple of small wins when I have an extra minute or an extra hour that I can work on his car while it's in the other part of the shop. Now it is miserable hot here. You guys are probably experiencing the same thing regardless of what part of the country you live in, but it is in the 100s this week and for this weekend, and so we're going to spend as much time in the air-conditioned shop as we can, because even going out to the main shop to get parts for his car, and right now I have a ladder and I've got the workbench pulled outside so that we can have access to all the parts for his car because I've stacked them on one of our storage racks, and so we'll be able to pull parts down and get to put on the car as we're working through this weekend. So let me catch up with you guys at the end of the day. The owner is going to be arriving momentarily. Mrs. IE427 is picking him up and picking me up a breakfast sandwich on the way back. So I will catch up with you later this afternoon or this evening after the car owner has gone back to his hotel room, and I'll give you a synopsis of what we got done today. All right, much later in the evening, I have sent the car owner to his hotel, so we sent him packing after dinner tonight. And I came back out to the shop just to catch everybody up on kind of what we did today. So here's the springs that we've replaced. And we went with the iBox springs. We went with the standard weight rating for the springs in the rear, which are the 400-pound springs. And in the front, we dropped from a 500-pound down to a 425-pound per side. So if you need the specs for the springs, they are 2.5-inch diameter springs. They are 8 inches in length. So the way the number reads is the 8 right here is 8-inch spring. The .250 is a 2.5-inch spring. And then the 400 is the weight rating. Now, regardless of what platform you have, whether you have the IRS or whether you have the solid axle, the spring diameter and the spring length is exactly the same for front and rear. The difference is with the IRS, all 4 shocks, coilover shocks, are exactly the same. The only difference between them is the actual spring rate. With the solid axle in the rear of the car, the shocks are actually longer, but the way that the collars that support the springs are mounted onto the shocks, they still use an 8-inch spring. So that's kind of a rundown on the springs that we chose. Here are what they look like in the car. And here in the front, we initially had a washer, a flat washer here and a flat washer here. And what that did was that it didn't give us enough reveal on the thread sticking out of the end of the nut that we had full engagement of the nylock locking mechanism on the nut. So we've removed those flat washers. There's really no need for the flat washers on these bolts because we don't need to spread the load out. We're basically spreading the load out of the bolt and the nut simply by putting it against this flat surface of the mounting. And same thing on the bottom. We removed a single washer on the bottom, but you can see the bolts that we have are still a little bit short. The ones that he had were too short and he bought new ones and then he cut them down. So we pulled those out because I wanted to make sure of the size. These are 3.5 inches long. And I think we would be better served if we just got 4-inch long bolts. So I'm going to replace those. I've got a list going of some hardware that we need for the car. We're just going to replace these and then I'll just send them in new for both sides of the car for these lower coilover mounts. No big deal. And then of course we've got the coilovers mounted in the back of the car. Let me take you over to the other side. I got a bunch of crap in the way over here. And these coilovers are mounted as well. So you can see, we just basically took them off, changed out the springs, and then reinstalled them. One issue we had was that we wanted to set the preload on the springs. And I've said this before, when looking at these coilovers, everybody assumes that they are non-adjustable. They are adjustable for rebound only. So if you want to adjust them, because we found them shipped in one of 4 positions, and they're not always the same. They're supposed to be shipped with them set at the softest setting. And that's what we found on all 4 of our shocks, but we ran into one problem. Both of the rear shocks, and I think it was just a coincidence that they were both in the rear, when we went ahead and popped the cap on the back and pushed the button down to adjust the rebound of each of the shocks for the rear, the button stuck. It wouldn't pop back up. And so when we pushed it down, we put them into the softest setting, which is full counterclockwise. And there's 4 clicks from softest all the way to the left, counterclockwise, to full firm, clockwise all the way to the right. And we set them both to full soft, but the button wouldn't return. It would not pop back up. And as luck would have it, I have 4 brand new coilover shocks upstairs. I went and grabbed 2 of those, set them to the softest setting. We put those in the back of the car. I took the 2 that we were having problems with the button. I'll work on those. I think it's just a matter that the car's been sitting for so long that any lubricant that the button had on it has since dried up, and they would not allow once the settings were done for the button to come back up. Before we took the front ones off, I sprayed a little lubricant into the recess where the button is on each of the shock, and those buttons were fine. We push them, we set them, the button popped back up, and they're fine. But the 2 on the rear we had issue with, and so I'm going to work on those probably over the next week and see if I can get those buttons to loosen up, verify that they're in the softest position. They'll go back upstairs. They're brand new shocks, so there's no sense in getting rid of them. They're perfectly fine. It's just the button wouldn't return back to its rest position after we had adjusted them. So the coilovers are all done. The springs are in. They're just where they need to be. We got onto the fuel pump next, and so I've got the fuel pump in the car with the hanger, and so you can see we've got the fuel pump hanger. This is no longer offered by Pro-M because Pro-M went out of business, and so therefore you're stuck with buying this from another company. Well, we found a company called Fuel Pump Factory. Now, the bracket looks good. It looks like a quality piece. The one problem I had with the bracket was that the return port to the bottom of the tank was kind of bent at the wrong angle. I'm not going to pull the hanger out, obviously, to show you, because now that it's in. But it's resting right against the fuel pump, and it didn't want to sit like previous ones from Pro-M had worked for us. But I was able to get it put together and get it all the way it's supposed to be. we went ahead and we lubed up the O-ring, which is actually a square-sided O-ring, put it in place, and got the fuel pump hanger dropped down in there where it needed to be. We verified that the sock, which is the pre-filter, is in the right spot by just peering through the fill tube with a flashlight, and everything looks like it's in place like it needs to be. So if you're wondering if you got it all together right, because that whole assembly needs to drop in the sump that's kind of in the front section of the fuel tank, you can take a flashlight and peer in through the filler tube hole before you consider it all finished and done, and just verify everything's in the right spot. So the fuel pump and the fuel pump hanger are in. What we moved on to next was getting these rear sail panels installed. So the primary reason to get the sail panels installed was that I wanted to get this charcoal canister installed because I made this bracket right here. I basically have a template for this that I've made from previous hangers for this charcoal canister, and I cut one out of some aluminum, and we want to send this to powder coat. So I wanted to make sure that we fit this in place and had it to where we could pull it back off and then send it in for powder coating. Now, nobody's going to see it powder coated back here, but all the brackets that we're kind of fabricating and manufacturing for the car are all going in for powder coat anyway. So this one, to not powder coat it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. So that's all done. That'll come back off. The bracket will go in the box with all the other pieces that we have to have powder coated. And then once we get that back, it can get mounted in the car. We have not riveted this in place. We've not siliconed it in place. We just pre-fit it. Basically, we drilled all the holes and got it all ready to install. But when we're ready, it'll go in. It's a lot easier to drill and place the trunk aluminum with those kind of out of the way, and then we'll put those back in for final assembly of the trunk, and the actual holes down the side will line up with the ones we have in the sail panel, and then those will all get riveted down together. The sequence of events that are outlined in the Factory 5 assembly manual direct you to put these panels on before the trunk. And what happens is you can't drill these front holes in the trunk floor aluminum with this panel in the way. So this is all going to come back off. We're going to fit the trunk panels, the floor of the trunk, and get that all laid out and ready to go. We can actually put that in now because our fuel lines and our brake lines are essentially done. But we'll just pre-fit everything, and then once we're sure that we've got no leaks in the fuel system, we've got no leaks in the braking system, then the trunk panels will go in, and then finally these panels will go on. We got kind of carried away when we were cleaning up for today, and we pulled the reservoirs back off, but there's the bracket that we made for our reservoirs. It's just made out of some 2-inch by 3-inch aluminum L-metal. And I've got it sent through there with a couple of 1/4-inch flathead screws, machine screws. And if you look, the bar here runs down at an angle, but that line we've got there is basically parallel with the main tubes of the chassis. And so they're going to be level in the car. Now, they don't have to be level in the car, but it certainly looks better when they're installed if they are. So the 2 flathead machine screws that we've got coming in from the top are way long. These are just ones, I've probably used these for 3 or 4 different cars doing the same setup for the bracket. So these are about 3 inches long, and right now I've just got some 1/4-inch nuts on there holding it in. You can see this is just a piece that was probably kicking around the material yard for a while. It was in their clearance bin. I grabbed it. Most of the stuff in the clearance bin they sell by weight, so you don't have to pay for the full length piece of it. This stuff usually comes in 20 or 21 foot lengths, so I bought a scrap of it that was like 3 feet long for a discounted price, and so it's got some scale on it, but this is going to go to powder coat. the powder coater is going to blast this, and then they're going to coat it, and it's going to be black, and it's going to blend in. The reservoirs, we put them away because they're so shiny and pretty. We didn't want to get them all scratched up. So as soon as we were done getting this all mocked up into place, they went back in the package, they're back in the box, and once the weekend is over, they'll go back up onto the storage rack. Now what I did on the top is I recessed the holes that these countersink screws are going to go in. We're going to actually get hardware that is the right length. And what I did this time, because I've made this mistake in the past, I offset the bolts, the machine screws, for the mount for the bracket versus the mount for the reservoir. So you can see none of our holes interfere with one another. I can't tell you how many times I've done this, and I've made the holes match up, and then you're just fighting, trying to get all the hardware to go together. I'm cutting, the bolts that go in from the top to a specific length so that, they don't interfere with the bolts that are coming through for the reservoirs. So this time, I thought ahead. I moved those bolts coming down from the top in so that they wouldn't interfere with the bolts that actually mount the reservoirs, and I think everything's going to work out really well. Now, the owner of the car asked me this afternoon when we were finished with this, and he says, are you going to cut off that extra length? And at first I thought he was talking about the extra length here, because the piece itself on the other side, the reservoirs are going to cover, so you're not going to see that, there are different angles. The bracket's going to be black, obviously the reservoirs are going to be polished, and so that you don't see. So I didn't understand the question, and then he told me that he was asking about this right here, if we were going to cut it. And what I told him is, no, we're not, because we're going to take this harness right here, and we're going to use one of our cushion clips, and we're going to strap it to here, right about that spot right there. And it's just going to make it nice and clean. It's going to hide part of the wiring behind the bracket and make it blend in. So no, we're not going to cut that off. Once it's black, you're not going to see it anyways, and the body covers this. So that's the reservoirs. Let me see. I got to look back at my list to see what else we finished today. All right, I don't know why I forgot this. I don't even know how it's possible. But along with the fuel pump, we had our fuel filter delivered a few weeks ago after the customer's last visit here to the shop. And so we went ahead and we installed that in the car. It's in a really good spot. We've installed it in this spot previously. The fuel filter actually ends up using one of the existing holes that would be for the 3-link brackets. Actually, on this side, it wouldn't be the 3-link bracket, and for the donor, it would be the quad shocks, the horizontal shocks for the donor kit that we don't use this bracket for anyway. So this front bolt hole is for that, and then we drilled a new hole here. We've got it somewhat centered. We use the washers on this side just because the hole in the chassis here is a little bit bigger than the bolt size. Just helps, again, to spread the load out. And then we just matched it here so they both look the same. The nuts are on the inside. Felt it would be better that way because that way the bolt isn't sticking out past the nut, and there's no chance of it making contact with the tire, even though it's a pretty good distance away. So that's one other thing that we worked on today. Let me move a couple of things around in the cockpit and I'll show you the other things that we got done today. We went ahead and we pre-fit our emergency brake handle. And we are not using the Factory 5 supplied brake handle. In my opinion, and it's just my opinion, it does not allow enough leverage to actually set the parking brake. It will make the pads make contact with the rotors in the back, but it will not keep the car from rolling in reverse or forward. You have to apply so much pressure to that brake handle to get it to set the parking brakes. To me, it just doesn't make any sense to use it. What we did before we got this installed is one of the same issues we had on the last Mark IV that was here, and that was the King's Cobra. And that is when this panel right here went in, you can see it's riveted in place. It's got rivets running down pretty much all around. No adhesive and no rivets were put in the side piece. And what happens is even if you're using the Factory 5 supplied e-brake handle, when you go to pull it up, it makes contact with the aluminum there because the aluminum isn't sucked in right next to the chassis. And so what we did is we went ahead, we drew a line because we can actually see the chassis right down here. So we drew a parallel line to that all the way up to here. And then we figured out some spacing, 3 inches on center for some sheet metal self-drilling screws. These are the same number 8 screws that come with your kit to hold some of the panels on. And we went ahead and we drove those in all 6 of these locations. Now these will get replaced with rivets. But for now, to get the brake handle in place, we wanted to make sure that we sucked that panel all the way over to gain as much clearance as we could so we could set the handle in the right position. And what we had to do is we had to use the rear mounting hole, which is down here. And at the front, we went ahead and we put 3 flat 5/16 washers underneath the handle, or in between the handle and the mount, and we notched the actual hole in the chassis and made it a slot so that the top of the handle can move out away from the inside portion of the tunnel. And that gave us enough clearance. Now you can actually get your hand in between the handle, your fingers in between the handle, to grab it, to pull it up in position. And by doing that, this handle is going to work just perfectly. We've also got the cables installed, so let me go ahead, I'll run to the other side of the car and show you the cables here at the front where they're running through the tunnel. We do not have them hooked up to the e-brake handle yet, but when it goes in for the final time, they will hook up to the equalizer and they'll be ready to go. All right, you should be able to see our cables right here. And these are going to tie into this frontmost mount right here. And then this equalizer right here is what our cables are going to tie into. I'm going to look at my list again really quick here and see if there was anything else we got finished today. I don't think that we did. I think that's it. So fuel pump over e-brake handles and cables. Yeah. So we've still got probably 4 or 5, 6 items that I want to take care of tomorrow, and then any miscellaneous stuff. You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to get the driver, I'd like to get the owner fit to the car, because even with the big and tall seats, he is 2 inches taller than me. But I think we both have about the same body length. It's just he's got longer legs. And I'd like to make sure that we can fit him in those what do they call them? Big and tall seats. We'll see if we can fit him in the car tomorrow. I want to do that before he leaves, tomorrow evening, to make sure that it's going to work, because this is the time. The seats are still kind of packed up and we have the box for him. I think that's it for tonight. I will catch up with you guys tomorrow. All right, everyone, I had every intention to pick up the camera before the car owner got here on Saturday morning. And he's staying at a local hotel, and so rather than having him rent a car, we just let him use Mrs. IE427's little HHR. And I told him whatever time he got up, he could just come over to the shop, let himself in, and work on the car in the shop. And he got out here before I did. I think I saw him roll into the driveway just about the time that I was ready to come out to the shop. But regardless, he was out in the shop, and he was actually sweeping all the garbage off the floor that we had generated the previous day. But since he got here early, or on time, depending on how you look at it, we just went right to work. And so even at the end of the day, I figured, I would just wait until we got back from dinner, and then I would pick up the camera, come out here and do a quick wrap up for you guys. Well, Frank had a few beers at dinner, and so I didn't think it'd be a good idea to pick up the camera and kind of slosh around the shop and give you guys an update in that condition. So it's a couple of days later. It's actually 2 days later, and I'm going to give you a quick wrap up of what we got done on Saturday, because the car owner, we took him back to the hotel on Saturday night, and Sunday he had a 9 o'clock flight home. So what we started on on Saturday morning was driver fitment. And so what we did before we gave up for the day on Friday is we pulled the seats down from up on the storage rack in the back. We've since put them back up. But we put what are now the only seats that Factory 5 sells, the bucket seats for the Roadster, the big and tall. We put the driver's seat in, and then what we used was a 2x4, because a 2x4 is basically 1.5 inches thick and 3.5 inches wide. And so it really works as the perfect kind of gauge to put under the front of the seats, because by simply moving it back, towards the back of the car, it'll elevate the seat up a little more. The sweet spot for elevating the front of the seat is in that 1.5 to 2 inch range, where the seat bottom starts giving you just a little bit of bolster under your thighs, for me anyway. And it gives you enough incline that it actually sits you down lower in the car. And it doesn't seem like it would, but it does, because the back of the seats are kind of shaped in a dish in the back of the seat. And so by simply elevating the front, it actually pushes you farther down in the seat, gives you a little bit of recline. And so it kind of gets your knees in a better position underneath the steering wheel, that if you are a bigger guy with, relatively long legs, you'll be able to have a little bit more room in the car. Now you would think that by, doing that, it pushes the seat forward. It does just a little bit, but not enough that you'll notice it in the pedal placement in the car. So we set him in the car, and it's really hard to judge without the windshield in place, because he has a very tall body like I do. And so I sit really high in the car. And so I think what we'll do the next time he comes down is we'll sit him in the driver's seat of Slytherin. Same seats essentially, mine are the older fiberglass seats, but we've pulled about half of the foam out of those seats, and we've actually put more of a suspension style support underneath them rather than just the hard plywood that they came with. And so you sit in about the same position as you do in these big and tall seats. But I think he's gonna fit. We also discussed possibly moving the steering wheel bearing here up. Now, this is an early Mark IV. The later Mark IVs, the steering bearing does not look like this in the car, guys. It comes back to about this position here, and it's got a much flatter bracket assembly here that the bearing sits on. So don't let this fool you. This is more like the Mark III style bearing. But we can put spacers in between here. So we can put probably a 1/4 inch to a 3/8 inch spacer. That'll move the wheel up, because we're moving it up here, but it's going to come at a different angle, and it'll probably move this up 3/4 to a full inch up, and that'll give him some more room for his knees without getting the steering wheel at an uncomfortable position. It also will still allow our turn signal switch to work, because what ends up happening with our angled spacer is it'll just suck itself tight to the dash, and then we're going to make our under dash supports fit accordingly. So if it pulls the dash out or pulls it in a little bit, our under dash supports are going to alleviate that pressure that's on the dash, take that in its kind of job, and then everything will sit nice and flat. So I'm not too worried about our turn signal switch fitting here. We've done this before, and we've had other customers do the same thing, and the turn signal switch just fits. But so we got him seated in the car, and I made a mistake when his wife posted a comment on Facebook, and I should have put her mind at ease, but I was in a playful mood, and I teased her a little bit. I don't think she's going to have to drive the car. I think he's going to fit just fine. There are other ways that we can make him fit better, and if it comes down to it, and these seats don't work quite the way we think they're going to work, we can go with the low back Kirky vintage racing seats, and that'll really plant him down in the car probably another inch or two, and that'll alleviate any problem that he might have viewing out the front of the windshield. So I'm not too worried about it, but it'd be nice to get it kind of squared away now so that we're not in a mad rush when we get the windshield in and find out that it's an issue. So we'll keep working on it the next couple times he's here, and we'll try to get it as settled as possible so that we're not making any last minute changes in order to make him fit. I think she's going to fit just the same in the car because while the car, the driving position for a bigger guy is really important, Mrs. IE427 and I can fit in Slytherin, and there are no seat adjusters in that. At best, what she needs is a pillow to sit on because the hood scoop, we have the Super Snake hood scoop on Slytherin, she can't see over it. And that's even true when she's sitting in the passenger seat. So she would just have to sit on a pillow. She hasn't driven our car since that Super Snake hood went on. But enough about us. We did some other things on the car as well. Once we got him fit in the car, we worked on getting the dash extensions. On this side, I fabricated this, I believe, in one of the last videos we did for the Decades Cobra. But what we did is we went ahead and we put the headlight switch in, and we put a switch in here for the hazard lights or the E-flashers. We just grabbed one of the switches. I don't even think this is the right switch for it, but they all take the same size hole. They all mount exactly the same. So whichever one was the closest one or the first one we found is the one that we placed in here to fit it. This is going to go off to powder coat. We're going to powder coat this gloss black, and then we've got the dash extension on the other side. And like I said, I think I did this in the last video that we did on the Decades Cobra. I've got this side fit, and this will come off and go in the box for the powder coating parts as well. The next thing we worked on was the horn, and it's just temporarily mounted because the hardware that we used is way too long, and the hardware that it came with didn't allow us to mount it quite the way we wanted. So I'm going to just pick up a brand new bolt of the right size. It'll go back in the same place, but you can see we tucked it in here behind the sway bar. We've got the horn portion of it facing forward, so it'll be good and loud. The two terminals are right here. We'll have to extend our wires, which are these two wires right here, over to reach it, and they'll probably just come down this path here and then over to the horn here. So that's all in, good and done. The next thing we worked on was the rear harness. So we basically just stretched the rear harness out across the top of the car, and we needed to add a wire. So we added this blue wire right here from the spot where the license plate light is or is going to be, and that's right in here. So the license plate light's going to run up here across, actually it's going to run up here across to the hinge, and then it's going to go in through a drilled hole in the trunk lid right about here, and then we'll fish the wires up. But we only need the blue wire to right about here, and we're going to have a micro switch, like a mercury filled tilt switch. They also sell another type that has a ball bearing in it. Either one will work. Long term, the ball bearing, a lot of times what will happen is if you live in a climate where there is a lot of moisture, the ball bearing will develop surface rust, and it'll get stuck, and then it won't work. So we like the mercury filled ones because they just really work all the time, and they're available between $10 and $15 on Amazon and eBay. I don't have a link for it, but if you just put in your search engine that you need a like a car alarm tilt switch, a bunch of different stuff will come up, and usually the smaller profile ones are the ones that are mercury filled, and so they're really easy to find. Anyway, so we ran that wire from here all the way to the front of the car, but we did go ahead and we landed the connector for the fuel pump, the connector for the fuel sending unit, and then we've got the wires in approximately where they're going to go. They may not route exactly where they're at right now. We'll get some cushion clips, we'll get all that stuff tucked away and mounted properly as we progress with the car, but I wanted to get the harness in because it's one less thing in a box somewhere. And when it's in the car, as you're doing other stuff, you can find ways to reroute the wire harness if it's in the way of something else, or you can reroute something else if the wire harness takes priority. So it's just nice to have it in the car at this stage. I do things a lot differently than, you know, it's laid out in the Factory 5 assembly manual, because I prefer to get all of these items, like the wiring, the brake lines, the fuel lines, all that stuff done before I ever mount a panel, because it's just easier without panels in place. You guys watched us do the fuel lines and the brake lines on other cars, and when the panels are in place, it just takes longer. So we got that all taken care of. We've got the wires for this side over here. Oh, at the front of the car, and I've pointed this out before, what I do is I don't follow the instructions for the Ron Francis harness. They actually tell you to come an inch and a half up, which I do, but they want you to do like these holes closer to the center of the car. And I prefer to run the rear harness right in line with this side of the tunnel. So right here, this support is what I do the hole for the rear harness in line with that, so that when I'm pushing my cushion clips in, I can't reach the wire right now because it's so low, I'll mount it right up inside here. And it just runs right along that side of the back of the car. Just makes it easier for me. That way the harness isn't on that side and I'm trying to strap it over here and it's crossing down on the front of the firewall at a funny angle. This way it just goes straight down and then straight back. So that, I believe, is kind of where we finished. I'm gonna leave it there. If you guys are enjoying the content here, as always, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that kind of stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.